Okay, so as that bumper video showed, we're talking about chasing carrots. That's the next series we're doing. Each week it's going to be talking about a new carrot that we chase. New mic as well. Try to position a little more in front of me. Sorry, Allison. The carrot we're going to talk about this week is fame. And so you might be thinking, do I really chase fame? I can tell you I have. As you saw, I played drums. So of course, growing up, I was like, I'm going to be the greatest drummer who's ever lived. I'm going to be in this amazing band. We're going to tour the world. It's going to be so cool. Then I started learning about other drummers and talented people, even like in Charleston. I'm like, well, I'll never be that good. And so if they're not going anywhere, then I'm probably not. So then I won't go into too much description about this next thing of fame I was chasing. I teamed up with a buddy and we made sketch comedy videos. And I don't want to go into too much detail because I don't want those getting out. Because they're funny, but they're a lot more funny to people who know me than they are to myself. So you might be thinking to yourself, well, Darren, I don't really care about being a famous musician or an actor or an actress or this amazing author. So this isn't going to apply to me. Well, it might. There's other smaller bits of fame that we chase, right? So worldwide fame is like a bigger idea of fame, but the smaller fame that we desire or chase might be fame from our family, our friends, the people that we know, right? Like I don't want to be famous in the sense of like anytime somebody talks to my brother about me, he's like, oh, he's the most talented person I have ever met. You would not believe how cool my brother is. But I do care what he thinks of me, right? So maybe I'm trying to earn these little bits of fame in types of being loved, right? People pleasers, myself included, very much so. This is a tough one for us. Because a lot of times we get into situations or things that we don't even want to do, but we want the person to like us. So we're going to put up with it because we want to be famous to them. We want to be someone they know that they can rely on. We want that credit. We want that credit. Credit's another big one, right? Sure, I might not, be able to get in anywhere I want with my fame or make all this money for my fame, but I want you to know how much I tithe. It's no 10%. Or I volunteer so much. You would not believe how I fit in having a family, a full-time job, and all the volunteer work I do. I'm pretty amazing. All right, we could be looking for credit that way. So the fame that we chase day to day is more of the way people think of us instead of the fame to our actual name. Another one that is a big struggle right now is fame through the social media. All right, so I'm not just talking about being an influencer, like look at all the followers I have on Facebook. It might be like, do you see how many likes that meme I shared got? Pretty cool. Do you know how many groups I'm in that I have the #1 fan page for? So social media is a big one because we're able to hide how we actually are and present whatever we want for the world to see. So even the fame we might get or feel from that isn't even a legitimate fame that we've earned. And I would like to then continue on and saying, Darren, I didn't want to be an actor, don't want to be a publisher. I don't do any of this stuff. Right? This does not apply to me. I'm extremely humble. I do not care what people think of me. I do not try to please others. So this doesn't apply to me. And if that's true, cool. But I can almost guarantee you know people who struggle with this. Could be a child, a relative, a neighbor, a friend. Riley, our 10-year-old, her biggest thing right now is, I want to be a YouTuber. I'm going to be a famous YouTuber. I'm like, yeah, I was there. Good luck, 6 more years, we'll talk about it. It's weird that so many people have this innate craving for fame, to be known, to be liked. And what's crazy is some people desire it so much that they'll completely overshoot fame and be completely happy or content with infamy. I mean, we see so many stories that are just horrifying. And it's like, well, they're going to remember my name. They're going to know who I am. That's good enough for me. And now I do want to say that there's nothing inherently wrong with fame itself. There's plenty of famous people in the Bible who are great. We'll take a look at one of them. That was God, right? God's pretty famous. God makes other people famous in the Bible. One of those being David, who God made famous. Chronicles 14, 16 through 17 says, "So David did as God commanded him, and they struck down the Philistine army, all the way from Gibeon to Gezer. So David's fame spread throughout every land, and the Lord made all of the nations fear him." Right? Fear is another type of fame. People are like, oh, did you hear what David did? I'm not messing with him. Everybody's heard of David in that army. We're not touching him with a 10-foot pole. Going down that same vein, another person we could look at who was famous in the Bible through God's means was Solomon. Right? God came to Solomon and said, ask for anything you want in the world. What do you want most? And Solomon said, I want wisdom. Which is a pretty impressive request, because I don't think that would be on the first 20 things that would pop into my mind when I'm like, okay, I'm getting a wish granted, what am I doing? 50 more wishes. No, you get nothing, right? But God was so impressed by that he said, you didn't ask for fame or riches, you asked for wisdom, so I will give you all three. Right? And if you know anything about Solomon, for a long time he was a very prestigious judge. So people would come from all over the land and be like, hey, deal with our problems. He was famous for that. He was like a biblical Jerry Springer, but good. Nothing wrong with fame itself. The issue comes from the pursuit of fame. Because fame can sometimes play with faith. Because what's at the deepest root of fame, right? It's the spotlight. It's the look at me. It's hard to think of others when so many others think of you. The way that fame grows now is so different. I know that I'm talking to a lot of people who are from a different generation than I was. Every 3 days, there's a new famous person. At least now. With all the different types of social media, with all the different things and interactions people have. I mean, back in the day, you had to actually be like the best of the best in your field to be known for it. I don't know how many people I know by name just because they did something dumb on the internet. Like, that was hilarious. You're famous now. Good job. You're not good at anything. That's what you're famous for. So the way fame works now is extremely different from the way that it used to be. And so it's even harder and harder as time goes on to find that balance, to figure out why that longing is there. You think about what happens when you get famous. The initial thought is, well, I have nothing to worry about anymore. I'll have enough money to take care of mine and my own. People love and adore me. There's no downsides. Even not talking to some of the famous people now, looking at their lives, you're like, that is awful. I would hate to be mauled going out to the store. One of the most famous people right now on the planet is Taylor Swift. And she has fake cars leaving houses and departments and stores to throw off photographers and reporters and fans. It's insane that it's to that point. For the most part, fame doesn't actually go that well. Because the reason we're desiring this fame is because we want to be known, we want to be loved, we want that fulfillment. And that fame doesn't come from others. There's a quote from Jim Carrey, and he said, "I wish that everybody could become rich and famous and have everything they ever wanted so they could realize that that's not the answer." Another famous person from the Bible I want to point out is John the Baptist. John the Baptist was pretty famous. Some of the things he was famous for was for being a crazy guy dressed in pelts who lived in a cave. Right? They're like, oh, let's go hear what the crazy guy's saying. Right? It's some small town infamy there, perhaps. But John has some great lines. John 3:30 says, "He must become greater and greater, and I must become less and less." Right? That main issue with the fame is who the spotlight is on. John says, "No, even though I have my fame, my mission is to show you more of him and less of myself." So how do we find that balance between the longing for fame, the big fame and the small scale, and directing that spotlight? And the biggest question is motive. Right? What is your motive behind the fame that you're desiring? Because if it's for worldly things, there will be worldly consequences to that fame. Who you represent is important. So if you're thinking of these small or big interactions of fame, because I'm not knocking any one of you, I definitely believe that tomorrow one of you guys could be on the news, right? Next big famous thing. So I'm not trying to stomp your dreams out with this. But motive is important. So who are you representing in that strive, that drive for fame? I know the very easy answer is Jesus. Jesus is the reason I do everything. But sometimes that's not it. Sometimes that's not the truth. I told you about my desire and longing to be a world famous drummer. I was like, I'm going to be the greatest drummer for Jesus. No, I was like, I want to travel the world. I want to be revered. I want to impress people and for them to love me. Who we represent is important. And that's something that Paul repeats many times throughout the Bible. But in Corinthians 5:20, Paul says, "We are Christ's ambassadors. God is making his appeal through us. We speak for Christ when we plead. Come back to God." Now, if you don't know what an ambassador is, it's a very important person. Right? There are ambassadors on behalf of countries, and they go in the stay of that country itself to represent them. We are to be Christ's ambassadors. So we need to do that inventory on the big or the small fame chasing that we're doing. I'm an ambassador for God. How does this represent him? Does this represent him? If that's a no, maybe redirect that chase. I want to ask you, whose approval matters most? Because if you sit down and really do some soul searching and ask 7-year-old Darren, whose approval matters most in this search for drumming fame, I'm going to be like, the world's? The entire world? And sure, I was a kid back then. So that's maybe the obvious answer to me. Well, there's definitely a question we should be asking ourselves now. Whose approval matters most? The approval of others can be a longing from not matching up to your parents, or the feeling lesser than because of a friend, or trying to keep up with the Joneses next door. We long and search for this approval, no matter who it is or who it's based from. And Paul says in 1 Thessalonians 2, 4, and 6, he says, "For we speak as messengers approved by God to be entrusted with the good news. Our purpose is to please God, not people. He alone examines the motives of our hearts. As for human praise, we have never sought it from you or anyone else." This desire to be famous can be based from being in a sinful world. Because we were made to worship, not be worshipped. Everything in our world and our culture now is pulling us to long to be more famous, to be liked, to be known, to be desired, and that is rooted in sin and self-fulfillment. We are not called to be famous, we are called to be faithful. When the race is done and we go to heaven, God's not going to be like, "Well done, good and faithful drummer. That's what you were known for." No, he says servant. We are here to serve him, to represent him, to be ambassadors on his behalf. We are to strive for this. It is not to us, but your name be the glory because of the love and faithfulness. That is Psalms 115:1. And so before I cap this off with a prayer, I want you to do some thinking about not only one, the spotlight, or two, who you're longing to impress. But think about that fame, right? That feeling of wanting to be famous, of wanting to be known. I think that the most fulfilling feeling of that fame can be felt from this. I try to remember that of all the people who don't know who I am, of all the people who don't know my name, God in heaven, who is the creator of every planet, every star, every fiber that has existed, wove me together in my mother's womb, knows every hair on my head, has plans to prosper me, loves me. So if the creator of everything knows who you are and loves you and says that you matter, how much more famous could you really be? Let's pray.